The young waiter whispered, "Ma'am, please don't drink your juice." His voice trembled as he leaned close, refilling my water glass. My hand froze halfway to the amber liquid sitting before me. The restaurant buzzed with afternoon conversations, silverware clinking against china, but in that moment, everything went silent. I looked up at him. His eyes were wide with fear, darting nervously toward the kitchen. He couldn't have been older than 23, with careful hands that shook as he poured. My gaze shifted across the table to Brielle, my son's wife. She sat perfectly still, watching me with an expression I'd never seen before. A soft, deliberate smirk played at the corners of her perfectly painted lips. Something cold slithered down my spine. My son Evan had just stepped outside to take a work call, leaving us alone at this cozy countryside restaurant. The sunlight streaming through the windows suddenly felt too bright, too exposing. Please tell me something in the comments section. Where are you watching this story from? And take a moment to subscribe to the channel, because every day there's a real story that will shake your heart. What did you say? I whispered back to the waiter. But he was already backing away, his face pale. The manager appeared from nowhere, apologizing for the disruption, ushering the young man away with sharp words about professionalism. Brielle's smirk widened. "Is something wrong, mother?" Brielle asked, her voice sweet as honey but laced with something darker. I stared at the juice glass. The liquid glowed in the sunlight like liquid gold. Beautiful. Innocent. Deadly. My mind raced. Why would a waiter warn me about my own drink? What had he seen? And why was Brielle looking at me like a cat watching a trapped mouse? "I think I've lost my appetite," I said quietly, pulling my hand back from the glass. Brielle's expression flickered with something that looked like disappointment before smoothing back to concern. "Oh dear. Are you feeling unwell? You know, at your age, sudden confusion can be concerning." At my age? Confusion. The words landed like carefully placed stones, building something I couldn't quite see yet. The restaurant door opened, and Evan returned, tucking his phone into his jacket. "Sorry about that. Work never stops." He kissed the top of my head. "Everything okay, Mom?" I opened my mouth to tell him about the waiter's warning, but Brielle spoke first. "Your mother seems overwhelmed, darling. Perhaps the heat? Or maybe she's having one of those moments we discussed." Those moments. What moments had they discussed about me? That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bedroom, staring at the ceiling of the house I'd lived in for 43 years. My name is Lillian Crestwood. I'm 75 years old. I've been a widow for 30 years, and a mother for 45. This house held every memory of my life with my late husband. His portrait hung downstairs, his kind eyes watching over the home we'd built together. I'd been a librarian for 4 decades, surrounded by knowledge and stories, teaching children to love reading. I'd raised Evan alone after his father passed when he was just 15. I'd worked 2 jobs to send him to college, celebrated every achievement, supported every dream. I thought I'd raised a man of character and integrity. But lying there in the darkness, I kept hearing that waiter's trembling voice. "Don't drink your juice." And I kept seeing Brielle's smirk when I pulled my hand away. Something was very wrong. And the worst part was realizing it involved my own son. I got up and went to my desk, pulling out a notebook. If something was happening, I needed to document everything. 3 days passed before I found it. I was organizing my phone, deleting old messages, when I saw a voicemail from 4 months ago. It was marked as played, but I had no memory of listening to it. I pressed play. Evan's voice filled the quiet room, muffled like he'd accidentally called me from his pocket. "She'll sign if we tell her she's confused," his voice said. "The doctor mentioned dementia screening at her age. That's all we need for documentation." My heart stopped. Brielle's voice responded, crystal clear. "Then we push harder. Small things. Make her doubt herself. By summer, she won't even question what we tell her. And the house? Evan asked. Sold within a month of getting power of attorney. The investment opportunity won't wait forever. I played it again. And again. Each time the betrayal cut deeper. My own son. Plotting to make me seem incompetent. Planning to take my home, my independence, my dignity. They weren't trying to kill me with that juice. They were trying to prove I was unfit. To make me look confused and incapable, so they could control everything I owned. The poison wasn't in the glass. It was in their hearts. I spent the next week watching and remembering. Suddenly, everything made terrible sense. 6 months ago, Brielle had approached me with spreadsheets and glossy presentations. An investment opportunity that required significant capital. She wanted me to sell this house, give them the money, and move into a smaller apartment. I'd refused gently but firmly. This house was my sanctuary, filled with memories of my husband. I wasn't ready to leave it for some business venture I didn't understand. That's when small comments started appearing during family dinners. "Mom, you already told us that story," Evan would say with a concerned look. "Mother, you've asked me that 3 times," Brielle would add with exaggerated patience. They'd exchange meaningful glances whenever I misplaced my reading glasses or forgot someone's name at a party. Little moments that seemed like normal aging, but now I saw them differently. They'd been building a case against me, documenting my decline, preparing witnesses who'd testify to my confusion. And that juice at the restaurant? Something to make me dizzy, disoriented, forgetful. More evidence of my deteriorating mental state. I returned to Mason's Countryside Bistro the following Tuesday. I wore my best dress and practiced my warmest smile in the car mirror before entering. I requested the same table and ordered tea. When the young waiter approached, I could see recognition and fear in his eyes. "May I speak with you?" I asked gently. "Please. You're not in trouble." He glanced around nervously before sliding into the chair across from me. "Ma'am, I could lose my job." The manager was furious. "I know. And I'm grateful you risked that for me. Can you tell me what you saw?" His hands twisted together on the table. "Your daughter-in-law. She had something in her hand, like a small packet. While you were looking at the menu, she opened it and poured white powder into your juice. She stirred it with her finger and wiped her hand on her napkin." My stomach turned over. "Did you see what was in the packet?" "No, ma'am. At first, I thought maybe it was sugar or sweetener. But then I saw her face when she watched you reach for the glass. She looked eager, excited. It felt wrong." I reached across and squeezed his hand. "What's your name?" "Caleb. Mom." "Caleb, you didn't save my life. You saved something more important. You saved my dignity." That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I would become the woman they expected to see. I started leaving my reading glasses in odd places. I'd ask Evan the same question twice during phone calls. When Brielle visited, I'd forget what day it was or repeat myself. But secretly, in a journal hidden in my bedroom closet, I documented everything. Every staged moment of confusion. Every genuine memory lapse, tracked separately so I could monitor my real mental state. Dates, times, witnesses, all carefully recorded. I became an actress playing the worst version of myself. Each performance felt like a betrayal, but I reminded myself why it was necessary. If they believe I'm weak, I whispered to my reflection each morning, they'll reveal who they truly are. My real self stared back from the mirror, clear-eyed, determined, gathering evidence while they gathered rope to hang themselves with. They wanted a confused old woman? I'd give them one. But underneath the performance, I was sharper than I'd been in years. Focused by betrayal into something they'd never expected. A mother who wouldn't go down without a fight. The family meeting happened on a Thursday afternoon. Evan and Brielle arrived with serious expressions and a glossy brochure for Meadowbrook Senior Living. "Mom, we need to discuss your living situation," Evan began, unable to meet my eyes. Brielle took over smoothly, her voice dripping with false concern. "Mother Lillian, we've noticed the struggles lately. The forgetfulness, the confusion. We think you'd be safer in a community with professional support." I looked at the brochure with uncertain eyes, letting my hands tremble slightly as I held it. A retirement home? But what happens to my house? "We'll manage everything," Brielle assured me, reaching to pat my hand. "You won't have to worry about maintenance or bills or any of those complicated things." "Will my house be here when I come back?" I asked, my voice wavering just enough. Brielle's smile brightened. "Of course it will, Mother. We'd never do anything without your best interests at heart." Lies. Every word was a carefully constructed lie. I could see it in how her eyes avoided mine, how Evan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. After they left, I tore the brochure into pieces and threw it in the trash. "We'll see who manages what," I whispered. The next morning, I visited Arthur Hale. He'd been my late husband's closest friend, a retired judge who still had connections throughout the legal community. I sat in his study and told him everything. The warning at the restaurant, the voicemail recording, the staged confusion, the pressure to sign over my home. Arthur listened without interrupting, his weathered hands steepled beneath his chin. When I finished, he sat quietly for a moment. "Lillian, you've always been one of the brightest people I know," he said finally. "Don't fight them with emotion. Let them trap themselves with truth." "How?" "My niece Margot Hale specializes in estate law and elder protection cases. She's brilliant, discreet, and she doesn't lose. Let me arrange a meeting." That afternoon, I sat in Margot's downtown office. She was sharp-featured with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She listened to my story while taking precise notes. "Mrs. Crestwood, what I'm hearing suggests systematic elder financial abuse. That's a serious crime with serious consequences. What do I do? First, you trust me. Can you do that?" I thought about how trust had nearly destroyed me, but something in Margot's direct gaze steadied me. "Yes," I said. "I can." Margot worked quickly. Within 2 weeks, she'd uncovered a paper trail that made my blood run cold. Power of attorney documents bearing my signature. Healthcare proxy forms I'd never signed. Real estate authorization papers allowing the sale of my home. All with signatures that looked like mine but weren't. "These are sophisticated forgeries," Margot explained, spreading documents across her desk. "See how the capital L in Lillian differs from your real signature? Yours loops twice. These only loop once. How long have they been doing this?" "Based on filing dates, at least 7 months. They've been very busy." I stared at the forged papers, anger and heartbreak warring in my chest. What's our next move? We haven't confronted them yet. That gives them time to hide evidence and create new stories. Instead, we let them continue. Let them think they're winning. That feels wrong. Margot's smile was sharp. "Justice often does at first. But your birthday is next month. I have a plan that will give us everything we need." She pulled out fresh documents and began explaining. By the time I left her office, I understood exactly what we were going to do, and why it would work perfectly. My 75th birthday dinner was everything Brielle could have wanted. I played the perfect grateful mother, serving Evan's favorite pot roast, and setting the table with my finest china. "This is wonderful, Mom," Evan said, though guilt shadowed his eyes. After dessert, Brielle pulled a leather folder from her designer bag. "I know birthdays should be pure celebration, but I thought we'd handle some routine paperwork while we're together. Just an estate organization. For your protection." I put on my reading glasses and examined the documents with theatrical confusion. "What are these exactly?" Just updates to ensure everything's properly managed. Standard legal things. What Brielle didn't know was that Margot had intercepted the real documents 3 days earlier. We'd switched them with papers that looked identical, but contained a completely different purpose. While Brielle thought I was signing away control of my estate, I was actually signing a notarized statement documenting her fraud. Every forged signature, every manipulated document, every lie, all acknowledged in legal language. I signed each page with a steady hand. Brielle's triumphant smile grew with each signature. She had no idea she'd just confessed to everything. The following week, Brielle hired a home health nurse named Vanessa Wright. She arrived every morning at 9 to check on me. Vanessa was efficient and cold, asking the same questions daily while taking notes on a clipboard. I quickly realized her observations were predetermined. No matter how I responded, her reports described increasing confusion and dependency. So I changed my approach. I started asking complex, intelligent questions during her visits. And I recorded every session on my phone, hidden in my cardigan pocket. Vanessa, can you explain the difference between vascular dementia and Alzheimer's disease? I asked one morning. She blinked, caught off guard. Well, that's quite technical. I spent 40 years as a librarian. I've read extensively on cognitive health. I'm curious about your assessment methodology since your notes seem inconsistent with my actual responses. Her face flushed. That day's report still described me as confused and disoriented. But my recording captured her fumbling, uncertain answers. The contradiction between her documentation and reality was becoming impossible to ignore. Each session added more evidence to our growing case. Sunday morning at First Methodist Church brought unexpected developments. I'd attended services there for 35 years and knew most of the congregation by name. After the service, I noticed clusters of people whispering near the fellowship hall. Fragments of conversation drifted toward me. Brielle was telling everyone they'll have the Crestwood house by July. Said the poor woman's losing her faculties. Such a shame. Already talking to real estate agents, I heard. The rumors spread like wildfire through our small community. By the time I reached my car, several church friends had approached with pitying expressions and offers of help. I didn't deny the rumors or defend myself. I simply smiled gently and said, "Bless her heart. Brielle has such an active imagination." In our community, that phrase carried specific weight. It suggested gentle dismissal, a polite way of questioning someone's truthfulness. By Monday morning, the gossip had shifted. Now people were questioning Brielle's character rather than my competence. Sometimes the best strategy is simply letting people reveal themselves through their own words. 2 weeks later, Brielle appeared at my door with another document requiring my signature. "Just a minor healthcare update, Mother," she said with practiced warmth. "Your doctor's office requested updated emergency contact information." I accepted her pen without hesitation. The paper looked official, covered in medical terminology and legal language. I signed at the bottom, my handwriting clear and steady. What Brielle couldn't know was that Margot had orchestrated this entire encounter. The document wasn't a healthcare form. It was a notarized acknowledgement that I had been presented with forged documents under false pretenses, that I was signing this statement of sound mind and body, and that I understood the legal implications. Every word had been crafted to trap Brielle in her own scheme. She folded the paper with satisfaction and tucked it into her purse. "Thank you for being so cooperative, Mother. You're making everything so much simpler." "I'm happy to help, dear," I replied, returning to my gardening. She had no idea. She just signed her own confession. Arthur Hale made a quiet phone call to the county records office. He didn't file a formal complaint or make accusations. He simply noted irregularities in documents filed under my name and requested a routine audit. The county took such matters seriously, particularly involving elderly residents. An investigation began within 48 hours. I said nothing to anyone. I tended my garden, attended church services, and continued playing my role when necessary. But I noticed Brielle's phone ringing constantly. She stopped by multiple times, her polished composure beginning to crack. "Mother, the county has questions about estate paperwork," she said during one visit, her voice tight. "Did you speak with someone? File some kind of report?" I looked at her with wide, innocent eyes. Oh my, did I forget to mention something? I do get confused sometimes. Her jaw clenched. "This is serious. They're examining signatures and dates." "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, dear." After she left, I watched from the window as she paced beside her car, making frantic phone calls. Her gestures grew more agitated with each conversation. The pressure was building. Soon, everything would collapse. Evan began falling apart. I could see it in his appearance during our weekly phone calls. His eyes were red-rimmed, his voice strained. He'd been going through old files and found the voicemail. The one where he and Brielle discussed their plans against me, preserved in his own voice. His best friend Marcus told me that Evan spent his evenings alone, drinking and staring at old family photos. Pictures of us from happier times, when he was still the son I'd raised with love and sacrifice. One night, Marcus found him crying over a photograph from his college graduation. I stood beside him in that picture, beaming with pride at what he'd accomplished. "What have I become?" Evan had whispered. How did I turn into this person? But knowing what he'd done and stopping it were different things. He was trapped between loyalty to his wife and guilt toward his mother, paralyzed by his own weakness. The shame was destroying him slowly, but he still hadn't found the courage to make it right. Marcus kept me informed of everything. Not everyone had been fooled by Brielle's performance. I invited Evan to dinner alone. Just the two of us. No Brielle, no pretense. We sat at the kitchen table, where I'd helped him with homework throughout his childhood. I served pot roast with roasted carrots and potatoes, his favorite meal since he was 6 years old. We ate in heavy silence. After dessert, I pulled out my phone and played voicemail. His voice filled the kitchen, plotting my downfall with casual cruelty. Evan's face crumbled. "Mom, I can't explain. She told you I was losing my mind." I interrupted quietly. "She convinced you it was for my protection. For my safety, didn't she?" He couldn't speak. Tears ran down his face, but I felt only cold, distant sadness. "My mind is fine, Evan. Sharp as it's ever been. It's your conscience that's deteriorating." He reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled away. "I'm your mother. I gave you everything I had. Every sacrifice, every extra shift at work, every dream I postponed. And you decided I was worth more as a signature than as a person. Please, Mom. Leave now." He left without another word. I sat alone in the quiet kitchen and cried for the son I'd lost, even though he was still breathing. Brielle's world started collapsing when the bank accounts froze. Every credit line, every joint account tied to documents bearing my forged signature became inaccessible pending investigation. Her lawyer stopped returning calls. Her business contacts distanced themselves. The investment opportunity requiring my house money evaporated without funding. She stormed into my home without knocking, her perfect appearance disheveled, her voice sharp with panic and rage. "You think you're clever?" she screamed, advancing on me. "You're just a pathetic old woman clinging to a house. You'll die alone in some state facility, forgotten and worthless." I stood my ground, meeting her fury with calm. "Perhaps I am just an old woman, but I'm an old woman who tells the truth. That's something you'll never understand." She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. "I will destroy you. I'll tell everyone you're senile, dangerous, incompetent. I'll make sure you lose everything. I looked pointedly at the corner of the room where a small security camera blinked red. Margot suggested I install cameras last month. Modern technology is remarkable. The color drained from her face as she realized her threats had been recorded. The fraud charges became public within a week. Forged documents, recorded threats, bank records, all entered into official investigation files. The local newspaper ran a front-page story about elder financial abuse without initially naming Brielle. But in our small town, everyone knew within hours. Brielle's own family disowned her immediately. Her mother called me personally, apologizing through tears for what her daughter had become. Evan resigned from his position before they could terminate him, the investigation into his involvement ongoing. I continued attending church as usual. People approached me with genuine warmth now, not pity. They'd seen the truth emerge. My dignity remained intact. Marcus found me after Sunday service. Mrs. Crestwood, Evan is completely broken. Not just about the legal consequences. About losing you. He made his choices, I said quietly. Now he lives with them. He wants to make things right. Then he knows where I live. But wanting isn't enough. He'll need to earn his way back if that's even possible. I walked to my car alone, head high. My silence had become more powerful than any words. 6 months later, I drove past the house where Evan and Brielle had lived. It stood empty, a weathered for sale sign tilting on the overgrown lawn. They'd separated within weeks of the charges being filed. I stopped my car and walked up to the porch. The door hung open, the house stripped bare except for abandoned trash. In the corner of the living room, I found a cardboard box filled with family photographs. Pictures of Evan's childhood, his first day of school, his father holding him as a newborn, Christmas mornings and birthday celebrations. All thrown away like garbage. I gathered them carefully, wiping away dust and dirt. These memories belonged in my home. Preserved and honored, not discarded by people who'd forgotten their value. That evening, I arranged the photos on my piano, the same instrument my husband had played. Each picture found its proper place. It felt symbolic. Final. I'd reclaimed what truly mattered while they'd lost everything in pursuit of money. Evan appeared at my door on a gray November morning. He'd lost considerable weight. His clothes hung loosely, his eyes hollow with sleeplessness and regret. He dropped to his knees on my front porch, his voice breaking. "Mom, I don't deserve forgiveness. I know that. But I need you to hear me say I'm sorry. For doubting you. For believing her. For being weak when you needed strength." I looked down at my son, this broken man who'd tried to steal my home and independence. Part of me wanted to close the door and let him suffer as I'd suffered. But I also remembered a little boy who'd cried in my arms during thunderstorms, who'd held my hand at his father's funeral. "Maybe you don't deserve forgiveness yet," I said quietly. "But you can earn it if you stop lying, especially to yourself. If you face what you've done without excuses." How? Start by standing up. Then start being the man your father believed you could become. He stood slowly, wiping his eyes. "Can I try to prove myself? That's not for me to decide. That's for you to figure out through action, not words." I met with Margot to revise my will. The changes reflected both justice and hope. Half my estate would establish the Crestwood Scholarship Fund for children of single parents. It would provide educational opportunities to young people being raised by resilient mothers and fathers who needed support. The remaining half would go to Evan, but with strict conditions. He had to remain debt-free for 5 consecutive years, complete counseling for substance dependency, and volunteer at the senior center twice monthly. Failure to meet any condition would redirect his inheritance to the scholarship fund. "You're not cutting him off completely," Margot observed. "I'm giving him accountability," I corrected. "Whether he takes that path is his choice." Justice without compassion becomes cruelty. But compassion without accountability enables further harm. I'd found the balance that let me sleep peacefully. 1 year after that terrible day at the restaurant, I stood at a podium during the community center's annual charity gala. I'd been asked to speak about the new scholarship fund. The room was packed with familiar faces, including local reporters and city officials. Tonight, I'm honored to announce the Brielle Hayes Memorial Fund for Integrity and Personal Reform. I began. Named not in celebration, but as a reminder that our choices define us. That greed destroys families. That truth eventually surfaces, no matter how deeply buried. I saw Brielle standing near the back exit. She was required to attend as part of her community service sentencing. Her designer clothes had been replaced with plain, inexpensive outfits. Her face was pale, aged beyond her years. Our eyes met across the crowded room. I didn't smile triumphantly or gloat. I simply nodded once, acknowledging her presence with dignity. She left before my speech ended, but she'd heard enough. The audience applauded as I returned to my seat. Justice served quietly with grace. 3 years passed. I was 78 now, still living independently in my home, still tending my garden. Evan had completed his counseling and maintained steady employment at a modest job. He volunteered faithfully at the senior center, helping other elderly residents with technology and paperwork. We shared Sunday dinners sometimes, carefully rebuilding fragile trust. One afternoon, I encountered Brielle working as a clerk at the county records office. The same office that had investigated her crimes. The irony was profound. Our eyes met across the counter. She looked older, worn down by consequences. "Mrs. Crestwood," she said quietly. "Brielle." Silence stretched between us, heavy with history. Finally I spoke. "I forgive you. But you'll have to live with the person you chose to become." She opened her mouth then closed it. No words could bridge the chasm between us. The shame in her eyes was heavier than any punishment a court could impose. I left with my documents, walking into the sunshine. Forgiveness didn't require reconciliation. It required release. Full circle. I sat at Mason's Countryside Bistro on a bright Tuesday afternoon. The same table, the same sunlight streaming through the windows. Caleb approached with a warm smile. He'd been promoted to manager after his courage that day was recognized and rewarded. "Your usual table, Mrs. Crestwood?" "Thank you, Caleb." He poured fresh tea, then paused with a gentle smile. "Still careful with your juice?" I smiled back, genuine warmth replacing the fear from years ago. "Always careful." He brought me a glass of fresh orange juice. The amber liquid caught the sunlight exactly as it had before. But this time, I lifted it without hesitation. This time it was mine by choice. The juice was sweet and cold. I was free. I'd survived betrayal by my own son, manipulation by someone I'd welcomed as family, and systematic attempts to destroy my dignity. But I'd emerged stronger and unbroken. Justice hadn't come through revenge. It came through truth, patience, and refusing to become what they believed I was. I set down the empty glass and smiled at the sunlight pouring through the windows. I was still here, still standing, still careful when it mattered. And that was more than enough.